everybody in YouTube land, and welcome. We are here to chat about the Scarlet Keys campaign 1 year, or, as Dr. Nate pointed out, 13 months later. It came out in November 2022. This campaign, dare we say it, is actually pretty contentious. So, it's one of those things where, if I just 1 second, I have them all on standby here. If you just search Scarlet Keys on Reddit, you're going to find a lot of discussion about it. And this is actually like one of those things that kind of inspired me to do this video. I didn't do this for Edge of the Earth. I don't think I did anyway. For like 1 year later to talk about the campaign again. But as you can see, I just searched Scarlet Keys and found 4 threads. One from like 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording. And there's a lot of negativity about Scarlet Keys. And there's also a lot of positivity. There's a lot of, like, you never see the people, I mean, it makes sense for the majority of things, who, when they look at Scarlet Keys, they're like, yeah, I'm neutral. You know, like, I'm just kind of, like, in the middle. Because that's kind of me for Scarlet Keys. I'm just kind of, it's kind of just there. I don't hate it. I don't love it. But it's kind of just there. But I wanted to break down and talk about, like, my opinions. But I'm doing this live on Twitch because I also was like, hey, I'm lucky enough to have an audience of people with their own opinions. So this can kind of be a roundtable discussion with Twitch chat. So I'll be reading their thoughts as well if they have any, as I just kind of go through and break down my feelings on the Scarlet Keys 1 year later. So, notably right off the bat, I've played this campaign four times? My blind play, I played it with Travis. I played it in Groundhog Day Part 1 and Groundhog Day Part 2. So 3.5 times, really, because we died in Groundhog Day. And in our Groundhog Day, we actually didn't play a lot. Maybe I have played it 3.5 times. Notably, I have not played Without a Trace. So this is the secret scenario. Oh, spoilers for Scarlet Keys if you didn't pick that up yet. we're going deep. I haven't played Without a Trace yet. So this is like the secret scenario that, I mean, also apparently Shades of Suffering is not a secret scenario, but it's a scenario that you have to, like, it's not available to you at the beginning, right? But I've not played Without a Trace. So this is the scenario where you actually go into the Fuzzy Land for the first time. You go there early. You learn the mechanics before you have to go again in the Congress of Keys. And I don't know how to do this scenario. I've not looked it up. I want to earn it somewhat naturally. I want to actually, like, earn it in a campaign. Because I haven't. And this is both a huge positive and a huge negative for the Scarlet Keys campaign for the majority of people out there. Now, I know also one thing that annoys me about Scarlet Keys is that if you say anything about Scarlet Keys, there's gonna be that one person who's like, actually, I don't really like the Scarlet Keys. And I'm like, yeah, good for you. I know it's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen on this video. There's like someone who sees the video and they're already like, hey, just so you know, I don't like the Scarlet Keys. And I'm like, cool. That's awesome. And I think a big thing to that is because it was so experimental. And in my opinion, I think the experiment failed more than it succeeded, but I can see why it's such a dividing line from it. The open world was really cool at first. The open world of the map was really cool. However, I know for Travis does not like the Scarlet Keys. I'm actually like, I'm pretty sure Travis never wants to play Scarlet Keys again on the channel. I don't think we're ever going to see another 3-player group run of Scarlet Keys. So that's just, I think, like, Travis is one of the people who really does not like Scarlet Keys. I actually don't know about Bryn. Bryn plays it close to the chest. So this is, I think, the map is a huge boon, but also a bane for this campaign as well. Because it's really cool at first. But when you're like me and you like to replay the campaign a lot of times, I actually don't like having to choose my path for where to go. Because you start in London, that's where this giant-ass pin is, and you get to travel anywhere. And it's really cool on the blind run, because it can be almost anything. And then you start traveling, and you realize that, oh, a lot of these places kind of don't have anything. Like, yeah, they give you... This is actually, I see this a lot, people bring up the alternate point, is that there are the dossiers, which are not, they're in a separate spot, right? Yeah. There's a lot of small things, the Foundation dossiers. Investigators allowed to peek on the, because they're on the location, right? Yeah. The whole idea is that you're going to read the dossiers, which on Tabletop Simulator, they actually got all the dossiers here, which I think is really cool. Gives you kind of just like the summary to them. I know Travis printed these off as well from his for when he played it with his family. And I think that's really cool. I think what they should have done is, rather than have them on the scenario, they probably should have had them, like, right here, you know? Embarking in Travel, Foundation dossiers, and just had a few pages with just the dossiers on them so you could, like, go through. They should have been like, oh, here's the Foundation dossiers, this is all the information we gave you can just flip through this right here, as opposed to, like, looking through the book. Because I understand, like, they give you, like, the one-line summary here, right? Like, these are all the locations you can check out. But then they tell you to just go through the campaign guide and find stuff, when I think they actually should have probably just put it in front of you and say, hey, you should do this. And Walker of Tales, I agree. This is, like, we're pretty much saying the exact same thing. They should have been assembled separately, and they should have been, like, right where this dead heat is. So... this is where you see another one of the big criticisms online, is the amount of reading that comes from this if you go the wrong way. Because it's an open world, you can travel anywhere, and that's really cool. So I'm like, hey, let's go to Stockholm or Rome. I think we went to Rome in our first play, because I told the guys I wanted to go to Alexandria, because I was super hyped on the Beast with the Crimson Cowl. So... we want to go to Rome, and we're like, we are very excited about this. So why don't we go to 51T? Which is, if I remember correctly, it's actually the page number. Which is nice. I think that part is structured really nice. I mean, I'm going to get to 51, and it's not going to be there, and then there we go, 51T. And you get this! And you get a full page of reading. And it kind of doesn't tell you too much. Right? It's like, you just gotta read it and you're like, oh, okay. Because otherwise you get to this one, okay? Because you're not off mission. You come here and you read this little bit. I think that, for me as well, my other criticism is the amount of reading. I know there are people that like reading, and you know what? More power to you. But mine doesn't come from a position that reading is bad. I do like more when there is more story in the actual scenario itself, the emergent gameplay over the narrative gameplay. But I do wish that the reading was less, mostly just for people who have limited time to play. And they suddenly can potentially be reading for 30 to 40 minutes. And it's happened. There's been a lot of people who have said that that's happened. It happened to us. We read for, like, I think 30 minutes at the end of one video, and we did nothing. I think that if these sections were smaller, there would be less of issue with that as a whole across the community. Mostly just because for me, it's like the people playing, the box advertises playtime. Playtime is very important for board games. I'm taking this just beyond the scope of just ARKHAM. Playtime on a box is very important for board games because it kind of gives you an idea of, when you know the game, how long it's going to take you to play. And then in your busy life, you can use that to determine how many games you can play on a game night, if you can squeeze in a game after work, all that kind of stuff, right? This is why I like board game time. Playtime is very important to me when I'm purchasing board games as well, because I also have to figure out what we're going to play on the channel, right? Like, if we're going to stream, how many board games can I fit in an evening? And this game, it takes a while, right? It's generally roughly about 30 minutes a player. That's kind of like where you are. So if you're putting away an hour for ARKHAM, and then you have to get to this, you get to this section and you read and you read and you read, suddenly you have less time in your hour that you put aside for ARKHAM to play ARKHAM. And I know reading, again, people say reading is fine. People have also provided solutions. People will also provided solutions where you send the readings to each other in Discord to read before. But I don't think that is a good thing, you know? I don't think that is like, I don't think that is a positive, and I don't think that's a solution. I think the solution probably should have been presented in the campaign guide itself with just shorter sections to read. If everything was like 2 paragraphs, like if this Romulus and Remus 1 was just 2 paragraphs and then go, that would be the way. That would have, I think, been the way to mitigate a lot of the problems that the community as a whole would have had with this. Again, I'm coming in with as like pretty neutral on Scarlet Keys. And there are going to be positives, I promise. But we're just going to be tackling, in my opinion, what are the elephants in the room before we get too into this. And yeah, that's kind of how I feel as well, Holy Helicopter. When the people say, we just send the readings between each other, like we send it on Discord before the session, and that solves the problem. One, it actually doesn't solve the problem, right? You're still spending that time reading. And number 2, it is just homework. And like, I like my board games to not require me to like do homework. That's why I stopped playing like a lot of tabletop RPGs, because there's a lot of homework that goes into those games. With that said, I will respect the fact that if you play this game solo, the reading ain't a problem. Like, because reading's just like a fun thing to do in real life. And that's something that you can just like, you know, do in your own time if you're playing solo. So it's not one of those things. All right. So going back to our blind play, we did roam and we got an additional resource. And we may return to Rome again, but only after playing another scenario. And we were like, okay, that was actually a pretty lame intro. That's a pretty lame intro into this, you know? So what I think also could have been good is if they made every adjacent... Let's go check out Bermuda. I'm curious. 20E. Let's just check it out. Because I think what they should have probably also done to mitigate some of these things... Oh my, that's okay. Skip to Great Work 5. Paragraph. I'm cool with this. This is a good amount of reading, in my opinion. You get an additional card in your opening hand. Make all the adjacent scenarios. That, or make all of the adjacent locations matter, right? Like, say you go to Rome. And instead of getting the 1 additional resource, it says, hey, I want you to solve the problem in Marrakesh, or I want you to solve the problem in Alexandria. If you solve one of those problems and come back to me, I'll give you a reward, right? Like, actually give like an additional side quest as opposed to the structure that happened here. You know, it's just like, hey, I'm in Rome. I've heard there's some shit going down in Marrakesh, and just paint a bigger picture of what's happening, you know? And then like Alexandria, same sort of thing. It's like, oh, there's also some shit going down in Alexandria, if you do one of those things and come back to me, I'll give you a little kiss on the lips. You know, like I'll give you a little forehead kiss and make you feel like a little frog. And I think that would help mitigate a lot of it, because I think people would be okay with reading, maybe not to the scope that is actually in the campaign guide, if it mattered more, you know? Because one additional card in your opening hand, just to read this, is pretty alright. But it also becomes a little bit daunting, but also kind of cool. That it's... You get all these things where it's like all these things that it could be, which is neat. I think that is a cool hook, and I think a positive from it, because you get there for the first time, and you're like, okay, who the fuck is Tawil Masai, first off? How do we get this in the future? Because then if it pops up, you can mark it in your brain log, being like, okay, so now I know next game I can come back to Bermuda to do this. Sorry, I'm just gonna be like, and I think that's, there's something in chat I'm gonna follow up on, but I do think, I think this would have done a big thing to mitigate some of the problem. Like, let's also go look at Stockholm, because I think that's the thing, right? Because you're painting a picture for your audience, right? So check if you're in Stockholm, Strange Architecture 4. You go to 6, so you have to read 2 paragraphs, and you've appreciated the architecture. Let's go! We were like, yes, that building's cool, right? I think that building's neat, you know? All right, we're so, that's awesome. The building's cool. We looked at it. It's nice. And I think that what should have been the most important thing is they should have made Stockholm, they should have made Rome, and they should have made Bermuda better, right? I think that this would immediately, because for us, we were like, I'm so excited, let's go to Rome, and then it was just nothing, right? And I think that paints a picture where in your first perspective of the game, it doesn't actually like matter what you saw, right? Like it doesn't matter, like these locations don't matter. And then it kind of becomes a little bit, it's weird the human brain can work like this, right? It becomes one of those things where now you're like, those are a waste of time, and they become just reading, right? Like if they were different, maybe, right? Maybe you would be less inclined. That's just my, once again, this is just my own kind of opinion. All right, there was something I wanted to talk about. It makes you less excited to go to a new place. Exactly, right? And I think that's kind of, if they made these ones more exciting, or alternatively made all of the first connections a mission, like Astute Dunsparce said, I think that also would have helped mitigate it a bit. But I think if I go to my point about reading, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it, and I feel like the reading kind of just doesn't matter for the most part, unfortunately. All right. Holy Helicopter says, do the reading spot give you info for Desi Amaranth feel like what you're talking about in the mattering? Yes. I do think that those are a good example of helping you unlock new paths in the story without just like you getting there for the first time and being like, oh, I get one additional resource next game, and I'm going to need to write that down in our campaign guide, and once we've read for like 30 minutes, we get to get that one resource, you know? Okay. So, what do we talk about next? The map, the reading, the scenarios? Should we dive to the scenarios? I mean, like, we talked about the map, by the way, Heroic Logic. How's it going? Is there more I have to say about the map? I love the map in theory. Like, there's a lot I like about the map. I love the secret locked locations, right? I love the secret and locked locations. Like, that is really cool. You see shit like this and you're like, okay, I'm excited to see what these can be. To be honest, I actually don't know what most of them are. One of them is this location, right? Shades of Suffering. Very, very slight spoilers. Masai Twila is the best example of this because he has like 4 destination points questline that fully concludes in reading only and no scenarios. That's probably not good. If I have not experienced this, I don't know why you would lie, because that would be crazy. So you got to be telling the truth. And if I'm looking at the perspective that the Maasai Tuila story, or whatever his name is, let's go to Bermuda and actually give this man the respect he deserves. Tuila Maasai, there we go. If this is true, that he has a plot line that carries in only reading, and you never... so you can get the bail engine. And I think this is actually... Like, you get the key from this. I think this is my... Besides only on 2 locations, though. Okay, so maybe you were lying. Maybe not lying. Maybe you're using sarcasm. I don't know how to do this because I've never done this, so I actually can't speak on it. But I'll say what the point that I originally was going to be saying, which was... I think that this campaign sacrificed emergent storytelling for dictated storytelling, you know? And I think for me, I don't like the reading. I'm not hot on like having to path my location. I have another point I got to get back to on this. But to me, I feel like the emergent storytelling has dropped. And that's what I love about Arkham, right? Like, if we look at my personal favorite scenario for Arkham is the unspeakable oath from the Path to Carcosa. And I am warned about the spoilers for Scarlet Keys. And now I think it's time for me to warn about spoilers for Path to Carcosa. That scenario is beautiful storytelling, right? And it does it without actually telling you any text to read apart from gameplay text, right? So you get there. The asylum is normal at first. And then in 2 turns, suddenly the inmates start attacking you, right? And what does that mean? Then you have to go deeper. You go down, you have to steal the keys, which is told through the act and agenda, which I personally consider to be the emergent storytelling as well. You steal the keys, and now you can open the doors that you couldn't before, right? Then you start lighting fires. You start you're starting a fight. You make the guards patrol. Like, am I actually crazy like everyone else, or am I doing this for a reason? Why am I starting a fire in the kitchen? You get down into the basement. The monsters start showing up. And all of this is told through gameplay, right? Which is really fucking cool. That's also why I really like, once again, spoilers for Blood on the Altar from the Dunwich Legacy. The picture that it paints of going to the old chapel, pushing aside a broken pew, and finding a trap door that's locked, and you're like, I need to find the key to get in here, is told entirely through gameplay. And I think apart from, in my opinion, I think just this scenario, I actually can't really point at emergent gameplay, like emergent storytelling like that, outside of this scenario. Outside of Dancing Mad. And if there was, I don't remember it. Because the reason why I'm kind of mid as a whole on the Scarlet Keys is because I don't love any scenario, but I actually kind of don't really hate a scenario. I've only played Shades of Suffering once. I know Travis hates Shades of Suffering. Shades of Suffering has a mechanic that I'm probably the least fond of, which is the whole the heretics from Wages of Sin, where it's like bring the guy here. Oh, you found wrong guy at wrong location. He actually was supposed to go here. That's not a mechanic that I enjoy in Arkham. I don't enjoy that kind of stuff. But I've only played it once, so I don't want to talk further on it, you know? Shades of Suffering is a boundary beyond problem. The best thing to do is ignore the level and prep for the boss. I could see that being true. Okay. I had to say something about the map. Yes. I don't want to get too far ahead. I have a lot of thoughts, and if people watch my videos, you can know that I'm kind of scatterbrained, and my thoughts kind of just go everywhere. One thing that I wish Scarlet Keys gave you, maybe all the way in the back of the book, right? Like, maybe, like, you know, like before, after this page, right? Where it gives you paths to follow, right? It basically just gives you different ways that you could play Scarlet Keys so you don't need to think about it, right? You can just, it's like, hey, you want to do the secret path, you know, go here, do this in this order. This is the time that will generally have you spend and give you some buffer time because it can fluctuate depending on how scenarios go, right? This is the save Africa path. So you like come down over here, do these ones, and like come this way, right? And I think that those, I think that would have made this better if those existed. And I see Holy Helicopter, and I had this locked up. I had my gun loaded and ready to fire. We have those ways online made by fans anyway, though. I don't think that's a positive. This is, once again, this goes back to me. That's homework. I think the designers should have done that. That's like what I'm saying. I feel like this would have made Scarlet Keys a better out-of-the-box player experience if the designers did that instead of it going onto the fans to make those paths. Because it's just like the due diligence to make sure that like your open world, like, because like open world is good in video games. I don't think, after playing Scarlet Keys and Earthborn Rangers, so for what I've played so far, I don't think open world works for board games. Board games are like, their very design is structure, right? And I think that it would be a better experience if there was more structure that you could help guide your players with. Because board games are just, they're literally just, that's why they're like, why they were so popular as, in Germany, because Germans love structure. Does Gloomhaven count as open world? No, it does not. That's you are given a very limited amount of scenarios to choose from to play, and it doesn't actually matter too much about that. Have you played Seven Continent? I've not played that one. If it's open world, I'll probably still have my problems with it. I've not been impressed by open world in board gaming because there's just too many goddamn variables for people to play. Yeah, Gloomhaven is very structured, yes. Because structure is very important in board games. And I think if the designers included some structure in the back of it, you can just be like, hey, you can follow these paths, it would have been a better experience out of the box from it. Okay. All right. That's what I wanted to say about this. Let's go to the scenarios as a whole before we inevitably jump back to the map. Okay. So, as I was saying, I think I'm pretty neutral on the majority of the scenarios. Some that I like more, some that I like less, but overall, I think I'm generally kind of just neutral. Riddles and Rain. I've played this opening scenario so many times that it's one of those things where I'm kind of more negative on it just because I've played it so much. Dead Heat is... I personally love the hell out of this scenario, and it's mostly because Amaranth... Where is she? She's hiding somewhere. Let's get her out. Let's get Amaranth. Get her on screen. Dead Heat! Let's go! Welcome to Blighttown, baby. Amaranth is actually scary. You know? She's actually, like... I did this to myself. I definitely did this to myself, where I did that video because there was a person in the community who made that big document cataloging everything we knew about the Coterie members from previous Arkham Files games. And then I made a video breaking that down for people to learn some lore about the Scarlet Keys and the Coterie members, what we might know about them before. And I think what's unfortunate is that painted a much better picture than what you get from them in the actual game. I actually think there's only like 2 or 3 Coterie members that I think are actually, they live up to what they should, you know? I'm gonna give a bit more. I think that Eche, or whatever her name is, from Dealings in the Dark, I think she also lives up to her name. Because she's not supposed to be... I think she's like the hesitant ally. She fits that role really well. But Amaranth is actually terrifying. And same with the Sanguine Watcher as well. He's also like... He doesn't fuck around. My favorite, the one that I was most excited about, Beast of the Crimson Cowl, just push that old vampire down the stairs over and over and over again, and it's no problem. He's a wimp. But Amaranth is really cool. And it's one of those things where it works. She works really well at being menacing. And then she also becomes the alternate version of herself, where she just becomes, even stronger. And I think that this also, once again, tells a really nice story, right? Where this one, she's a bit more subdued, bit horrifying, like she scares you more. And with this one, she's a little bit more, she's like trying to take you out, so she becomes more damage focused, which I think is kind of is cool for that. But what I really like about this one is that it does a great job of setting the scene with the agenda and the act deck. Which, to me, is when I've played... to me, it's very important, because when I play campaigns over and over and over again, all I end up reading is just the agenda and the act. And the agenda and the act needs to do a good job at setting the story for the scenario you're about to play, right? And I think that this one does a good job at telling you what you're going to be doing. I also really like the scope of the scenario where you need to actually like save civilians and then like it becomes abandoned afterwards. Really cool scenario. I really like it. It's probably my favorite in this campaign, which I think is I like it. I think it's just a good scenario. Sanguine Shadows. I've only played this one once. This one's pretty popular online. This is generally one of the ones that people say it's one of the ones they really like. And I've only played it once. I thought it was cool. I like the Sanguine Watcher. He's really neat. I love the design of the Reverse Night Gaunt. Everyone knows him. Everyone loves him. It's Reverse Night Gaunt. I love Reverse Night Gaunt. I think that's great design. Reverse Night Gaunt. He's cool. However, with all that said, with all that shit said, I do wish it didn't require you to bat 100 to get to the second part of the scenario, you know? Because having a 100% hit rate is kind of crazy. I think what they should have done instead was the higher your hit rate, as long as your hit rate was not 0, you got rewarded, right? So rather than have this guy only show up if you hit 100, have this guy enter with some damage on him or something like that, or like some extra clues. You get some clues from the token bank if you hit 100. Because you do have to do it 3 times, right? So you can either hit like 100, 66 or 33 or 0, right? Something like that. You have to do it 3 times. Because like chasing her around flavorfully is really cool. I think like the idea behind that is really nice. But having to hit 3 for 3, it is 3, right? I've only played this one like I said once. It's cool, but I think having to go 3 for 3 sucks. I think like if like they didn't want to give any reward, 2 of 3, but I do think that's scaling up. If you did 1 of 3, she doesn't trust you, right? She doesn't respect you. She's like, you're fine, but I'm gonna get out of here. And then the Sanguine Watcher comes in and says, I got a Gatling gun, you know. And 2 times she's like, okay, you're kind of cool. I'm kind of for it. I'm gonna kick the Sanguine Watcher before I go, and then he comes out with his you know. And 3 for 3, she's like, let's fucking go. I'm gonna cut off the top of his head with a scimitar, right? And I think that would have made the experience more enjoyable because I'm gonna echo what chat is saying here. This is one thing when Travis and I were playing this one, because I played this one with Travis on Patreon. Travis said, hey, Justin, this seems like the perfect scenario for your kind of play style, because you have to hit the ground running in this scenario. You need to be like getting cards out of the shadows, like on turn 1, right? And with 4 players, don't you start with like 4 Doom on here as well? Yeah, right? Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, it doesn't give you any time to set up, right? Maybe like it'd be so crazy if Ancient Evils were in here. No, thank God. I mean, I think with all this said as well, I do think that the Mythos deck design is really stellar. I think that like a lot of the stuff that comes out of the Mythos deck is really strong in Scarlet Keys, you know? So I want to just like give the props there. I think the Mythos deck and the Treachery cards and the enemies, like once again, Reverse Nikon, we love them. I think the design on that stuff is really strong. I think just the scenarios need a little bit of like some, I think they need to go back to like the fail forward and just understand that like, especially in this scenario, the second half shouldn't be the reward. The second half should be the scenario, and the reward should be making the second half a little bit more palatable, right? Because there's people in chat like Walker of Tales who is like from everything I've heard them say in chat and from Call of the Plaguebearer is a very good and knowledgeable ARKHAM player. And if just they haven't seen it because of the 4-player balance, I think that's a scenario issue as opposed to a player issue, right? Is this somewhat similar to Vanishing of Eleanor Harper? No, I don't think so. Because I think Eleanor Harper gives you a full scenario, because you still get like 12 turns, right? With this one, you fail the first one, you might as well just resign, right? In my opinion, anyway. In my opinion. Oh. Okay. Let's take a pause here about the scenarios, and let's talk about 2 of the big mechanics of this scenario. Of this campaign, sorry. Alright. We're going to talk about the shadows and concealed, and we're going to talk about hollowing. Let's take a little step there. And I'm pretty sure both of these cards are in Riddles and Rain. All right. Get this out of here. I don't want to look at it. All right. So, Concealed. Apart from the rules baggage that Concealed has, I think that Concealed is a cool mechanic. I think that it's really interesting the first time it happens. I think my issue with Concealed is I feel like they didn't explore it as much as it could have been, you know? I think Concealed is a fun mechanic. I like the exposing decoys. I think that's really cool. I love the art design on this card as well. It's really, think both sides are really cool. They got a great art team over there at Fantasy Flight Games. But I do wish that it was, the mechanic was explored more. The thing that I always point to as, to me, the GOAT in ARKHAM design, and it comes from a custom campaign, and that's Scan from Dark Matter. Scan is a GOAT mechanic, also because Axolotl explores it in a large variety of different ways, right? It's always is the same, but the concept of scanning changes from scenario to scenario. Again, I said only Scarlet Keys, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Dark Matter here for spoilers. So cover your ears if you don't want to hear this. But it's very minor. In the first scenario, you're scanning your location. In the second scenario, you're just scanning your you're scanning your location and you hope you find something. In the next scenario with Scan, just in a random order, you're scanning combinations of icons. In the next scenario, you're scanning for specific locations. You're scanning specifically for locations. The scenario after that, you're scanning for locations based off of your location, and it makes the map grow. And then you visit Scan one more time, and you kind of just get like back to the basics. You get back to the first scan mechanic. And the reason this happened was because Axolotl, when I did my designer interview with him, told me that originally Dark Matter was only 3 scenarios, right? It was like, 3 scenarios. And then he added the other scenarios due to the request of other people. And it was because of that he explored the scan mechanic in different ways. And that's why the first time and the last time you see Scan, they're so similar, because back then Scan was just tiny. It was just that. Like, that was the mechanical identity of it. But having to add more to the game, to his campaign, he explored Scan in different ways. And what I'm saying with that is that generally Concealed kind of just feels the same from top to bottom. And I think this is why, even though, yes, you do Concealed for locations, and then Without a Trace, you're scanning for things as well that are a little bit different. Dealings in the Dark also kind of approaches it in a slightly different way. But a lot of people online in those threads that I pointed out earlier are kind of just like, can you do the same thing over and over and over again? And I think that if they just experimented with a little bit more, like, I'm saying this from a perspective of, oh, it's easy, because I haven't thought about it. But I mean, I do think that one day in the future, we're going to see a custom campaign explore Concealed, and I think they're going to discover some really cool stuff with it. This comes from the benefit. This is something I always say, that when people are like, custom content is so good, like, why isn't the real game coming out with that? And while, like, I think that, yes, that is a fair point. We always, like, there's a lot of good custom content out there. A lot of custom content is like the first ideas that the people have, and they're not working with the they're working on like their own time to do it, right? So they have more time to explore mechanics. They have to get that done. But I do wish that the Conceal mechanic was a little bit more. However, I do love Book v Shroud. I do love that it gives fighters something to do. I do think that the Evade is really nice as well, as it gives something to everybody, you know? And I do think that I like a lot of the mechanics Concealed. My only thought on Concealed is I just wish it was explored a little bit differently, right? Yeah, no, I think that is also the I'm very much on that as well. I think that the campaign guide suffered, and the rules as a whole just kind of like suffered a little bit due to the scope of the campaign. Except Mystics, we hate Mystics. Yeah, fucking burn in hell, Mystics. I do, yeah, I think that Mystics are a little bit screwed by this. It's basically just saying, hey, bring Wither or Sixth Sense, or like it's going to be a bit tougher on you, brother. All right. And I also agree with what Walker of Tales said earlier. I think Hollows is cool. But I feel like, and I think this is kind of a big thing for me for the campaign as a whole. You compare it to and this is the problem with the the open world, is that I don't feel like anything's really happening, you know? I don't really feel like anything's happening. And the Hollow kind of just doesn't really like feel like anything, you know? I think the mechanic's cool. I'm also not too upset about losing cards from my deck or hand. I think like stuff like that. I like punishing players like that. But it's just one of those things where just like the flavor of this, I don't get it, you know? I just don't really like, it's nothing to me. It's just, I call it static. I call this one Static Land because it's just nothing. There was that one scenario, I think it's Dancing Mad, where you can lose experience cards. And I think that's really cool. I think the flavor when you just strip it down is neat. I agree with that. But like it's very this, but I feel like in the scope of the campaign, I don't get enough as a player for me to be invested in it, you know? Like, let's just like, for example, look at Call of the Plaguebearer, right? Your custom campaign, which is, I played it recently, and I learned that's my favorite thing about Call of the Plaguebearer, is I learn something new every time I play it. But you do such a good job in that campaign, making you care about both the zombie side and the infected side, like the reanimator side, and then also like the first of the many side, so well through the gameplay, and also like your story is so focused. And I think that like they do a good job through the gameplay for like the flavor of these guys, but in the story I don't get enough of like the resolution because it's so open-ended, is rather what I was trying to say. They're nothing to me because the game doesn't make me care about them, apart from that this is the enemy that takes a card from my hand. I think like the Lovecraftian flavor of them is cool, but as far as I know, they're just static. That's all I've ever got about these guys. But back to Dancing Man. For this one, this is the one where you can lose experience cards, but they don't. And my thought with this is, I love that. I love that they can like take a Janae Beauregard out of your deck. That's so fucking funny to me. I love the hell out of that. What I don't love though is that they seem to have forgotten the fail forward that was the identity of this game. From Dunwich, you know? Yeah, the inherent issue of this enemy doesn't exist when you stop thinking about it. That is, yeah, that's better than, yeah, that's perfect, right? Because that is, right? Like, it's, when I'm not thinking about these guys, they're not here, 100%. But I do think that Dunwich was like the master of fail forward. And I feel like this doesn't have it. So I'm fine with you taking Janae Beauregard out of my deck. Take her. But give me the experience back. Or alternatively, do something else. Don't just, I'm losing and then you take her. It's also kind of the same kind of thing with Sanguine Shadows, right? They've made it easier for you to succeed in ARKHAM. But because of that, the failing forward is gone. It's a little bit strange for me to like say that kind of thing where I like the game to be punishing. I do like that it takes cards away, but I think you also need to remember the fail forward aspect of this game. It also hurts that we got this right after Edge of the Earth, and both campaigns have no cool ancient one of just whatever evil goop twice in a row. I got bad news. There's a lot of evil goop ARKHAM. There's a lot of evil goop bad guys in Arkham in like the Lovecraft mythos. I think the problem is more that we're like we're just right now in the evil goop part. I still fail forward a lot around here. Yeah, but is the game like what campaigns have you played, right? Because if you're still playing the early campaigns, guess what the evil and Feast of Hemlock's gonna be? It's gonna be goop! It's gonna be goop. But I mean, like, Dunwich, Carcosa, that all has failing forward stuff in it. It's one of those things, like, even Forgotten Age has got some failing forward stuff that you can get things going. I mean, like, the entire concept of it, you know? Yeah, color. There's goop, but it's a little bit more color. It's official goop. This is hashtag, like, people can... This goop has a name, so people are more likely to relate to it. I play Carcosa, and now I have Forgotten Age to fail a lot on. Yeah, and, like, you're playing the early campaign still when failing forward was... Oopsie, that's not right. Was a thing. That's why we need Backrug? Yeah, give me the fat-ass lizard. I'm choking on water. Backrug's in my throat. Backrug. Backrug, no. He's got me. Okay. So, I think that I like Concealed a lot. Hollow is kind of just there. You know, it's kind of just there. Will we be discussing Fortune and Folly? No, that is not part of the campaign. I know you get, like, the special stuff of it, but it is a standalone officially. I like Fortune and Folly, though. I think the numbers are a bit high. I think the numbers on the cards, some of them are just a little bit crazy. But I do think that it is a very fun scenario. I really like Fortune and Folly. Just the numbers are a little bit crazy in some places. The code I remember from Fortune and Folly is in the vote at the end. Yes, I know that. But it is not part of the campaign. What the hell? All right, this is the Eche scenario. She's cool. So this goes back to the coterie members that I think are really neat. Like, I think that really, like, fit the image of them really well. You know, she's the scholar, not the schemer, and she's here to help you. This one, I got no problem with this scenario. I got no problem with Dealings in the Dark. This is basically a fixed Echoes of the Past, in my opinion. It's an Echoes of the Past where where you're actually, like, pressured, you know? And, like, it doesn't, like, if you stabilize, you don't stabilize for long, right? Because, like, the big thing about Echoes of the Past is that if you win Whack-A-Mole, you get to keep going forever, right? It's a good thing that, like, the nitpicking for me, it's, like, my only comments on this one is nitpicking, which is the weird part where I wish you just didn't have to remove this stuff. You know, like, can we, like, talk about that? Like, it's strange, isn't it? Take all this, set it aside, or leave everything on it, and then put it back. You know? That part's strange. And that's how you know, like, the scenario, in my opinion, ain't bad. Because it's, It's one of those things that, like, that part's strange, you know? Yeah, just add next to them and say you cannot enter a non-bizarre location, right? This scenario screams that they wanted to use the checkpoint mechanic for Edge of the Earth and ended up cutting on the... Yeah, I agree with that as well. I agree with that. Do I think that the scenario would have been better with it? I think that the scenario is very well paced. I think it also... This one does a good job at telling a story as well, right? Like it gets there in the mechanics really well. Let me just look at this stuff. I wish the agenda gave you a bit more of a story, which is like act quickly. It does all right. It does okay. I think that one's fine for telling the story here. But I think that it's a good scenario. Like I said, I think people in chat are positive on this one. It's a good time, with a good amount of pressure. Some good enemies that show up as well. He's probably over here, right? Yeah, the Umbral Harbinger, the emissary of from Yuggoth. Like, we got some good monster of the weeks, you know? This is actually, so, like, I know a lot of people, their criticisms of Dunwich, which I think are entirely fair, is it kind of just feels like X-Files episodes, where you have the monster of the week. But I love the monster of the week kind of stuff in Arkham. I just love having the random boss that you're like, what the fuck is that? Let's blow it up with dynamite. And I think this one does a really good job of vibing with that. And I love the cultist chase. Even though the cultist chase is, the times I've played it, kind of anticlimactic. But it is a cool scenario. I have a small nitpick for the scenario. It shuffles 2 XP enemies in the deck, then almost immediately mills the encounter deck until you get a cultist with a chance to mill the XP from you. Yeah, that's a great nitpick, because it doesn't actually matter, but it's entirely fair nitpick. Yeah. I also love that the numbers are so high, right? On this one. This is the one where, like, the number can get, like, really big, right? Yeah, is this the one where, like, there's, like, so many Doom? I don't know. Alright, Dancing Mad. We go to Buenos Aires. Oh, look at these! Look at this! Oh, sell eyes only. That's so cute. That's so damn cute. You love to see that. Alright, there's no, I mean, I will say, we're not really talking about the Scarlet Keys here, but I think the mod managers have done a fantastic job with the Scarlet Keys package in Tabletop Simulator. But we're not really talking about that right now. Alright, so this was the one where I wanted to talk about what I think is probably one of the coolest moments in Arkham in a while. And that is, spoiler alerts, Double Desi! Everyone loves Double Desi! So I like this scenario. I think the first half is kind of boring. And I think the numbers, if I remember correctly, are just a little bit too high. In some places. I think that's kind of like, it was the side effect of the concealed mechanic. I think that the numbers were a little bit high in some places where they would have been lower in other ones, which I think ultimately, like, in theory is fine, but I think in practice doesn't really work too much. Like, they're just slightly too high. This is, so if I had to rate it, I think Dead Heat's, like, I think this one's my number, like, 2 just for the flavor, and then it's probably Dealings in the Dark is my number 3. But the Double Desi, so there's, spoilers again. Spoilers again for a custom campaign, Betrayals at the Mountains of Madness, which has my personal favorite scenario that I've ever played in a custom campaign in it. And that's scenario 4. It's so good that I still know the number. Like, I know the fucking number of that scenario, and I've only played Betrayal Mountains of Madness once. But it actually has a very similar mechanic to it, which is the doppelganger, which was really cool to see them actually do, and I think they did it in a really cool way. And I love the fact that it kind of carries over in the way in Carcosa. How do you store the killed Desi on Tabletop Simulator? I would put him up here and lock him. And I would just leave him right here, and he's always watching me, waiting. That's what I would do. But I think they do a great job, and it has like the whole like, do you take the oath? Like, do you fear H-Word's name in Carcosa? And I think it's like that kind of thing that it permeates and carries from game to game. Does a really good job of making you really sit with your choice. I think this one is really cool, and I like the scenario a lot. So now I want to jump on something that Ezekiel Abaddon said in chat, because this is another thing that I actually kind of have an issue with Scarlet Keys. The scenarios change depending on when you go to them, right? Like depending on how much time you have. And ultimately, that's good, right? I think like in design, that's good. There should be scaling scenarios. However, I think that it makes it slightly harder for the community to talk about the scenarios. Not in a way that I think is like it ruins it or anything, right? But I've seen it happen with like Dead Heat. Someone's like, "Oh, I love Dead Heat," and then someone else is like, "What the fuck? I hate Dead Heat. You're crazy. That was an awful scenario." And these two people are talking about Dead Heat with completely different perspectives of the time that they approach the scenario with. And there's not really like a good, easy way for us to do that as a community yet. And I think that's also partly why Scarlet Keys is hard to talk about online. The first one is because people coming in and being like, "Oh, actually, I don't like Scarlet Keys." But the second reason is because talking about a scenario is difficult because it changes on the matter of time. And yes, I do agree with Holy Helicopter. You could just say, "Oh, I went to Dead Heat and I had 32 time." And then it's like, "Oh, okay." But then you have to like, it just takes it so much out. Like if I say Unspeakable Oath, or if I say The Asylum, everyone's like, "Oh, The Asylum's great." You know, sometimes I get stuck in The Asylum. And I think that isn't really a thing with some of the scenarios here. It's a small little thing, but I do think that it does make it harder for the community as a whole to talk about Scarlet Keys. Okay, on Thin Ice. This is the one with what's their name? Thorn. Thorn and the Void Chimera. A good monster of the week. I love the monster of the week. I love the environment. I'm from close to the Pacific Northwest, so I love the Pacific Northwest, you know? But that can be said about even the first two scenarios on Dunwich. Oh, the experiment is so strong, just throw the what concoction. We did it in a different order. I disagree personally. Because it's never been the same with Scarlet Keys. Like when people are talking about it, they just say the house always wins, and like everyone knows, "Oh yeah, that's the one." I'm saying like the scope of which is different because there's 3 different variations as opposed to 2. Same with Phantom of Truth. Everyone kind of just knows, but I do think that there is these issues with this one a little bit more. I can respect that point, Holy Helicopter, but I do personally disagree. Because like even right now in all of these conversations, like I'm talking with like about Alaska, and even just here, for what Trey says, I always went to this one late. I think I like it, you know, and like it's not the same with the other stuff, right? You just say I did this one first. Okay, I got that. But like someone might never play this scenario early, right? Like that's kind of the thing where it happens. Right? And I don't think it has the same scope of what you were referring to in terms of House Always Wins or extracurricular activity, because it's a binary. It's either 1 or 2. With this one, it's 1, 2, 3, right? Like there's different forms for it. And because the campaign scope is so big, no one might ever play it. So they only will have one perspective and won't be able to join in on those conversations. Yeah. That's the difference. Thank you, Monocle Man, for going with that as well. So I liked this one a lot when I played it the first time. So did Travis, but Travis told me that it was less exciting on a replay once you know what you need to do. And I can see that being true. But I only have one playthrough of this. It was early on in the campaign. I like the bears. I like the bears. Where are they? I like the bears. Those are cool enemies. I like it. Yeah, I think Thorn's all right. I think Thorn's picture that was painted, that I had painted of them in the beginning, was pretty accurate. My problem with it, though, is a problem with a lot of pieces of Scarlet Keys, which is just that I don't remember Thorn, because I'll be honest, I don't really remember most of the reading of the text when Travis reads it. It's not that I'm not... I actually think I read this one as well. It's not that I'm not listening. It's just that, like, it kind of meanders a bit much, and I don't really remember it. My memory comes from the gameplay, and I think Thorn, mostly for when Travis and I played it, Thorn, my whole interaction with them was just through the story, right? And that sucked, because I don't really actually have any memories of Thorn. So I think that would be my thing, is like, this is also one of my big hopes for Feast of Hemlock Vale, is that it takes a lot more out of this and puts it in this. So it takes it out of the campaign guide, which I hear is going to be 2/3 the size. That's kind of like what apparently Duke said in the Mythos Busters Discord. And puts it more in here. To me, except for the Red Glove Man, all the other guys just felt like a randomly called us number X. That's fair. I have some that resonate with me because, like, I think Amaranth is nice because, once again, she's omnipresent throughout the whole thing. Omnipresent? I don't think that's the right word, but it gets my point across. Oh, sorry, guys. Yeah, I need to play this one again. But I also got to play this one. And I don't know if Alaska is the best route to do that. The thing is, for me, though, is that I always kind of, like, do, like, this. I start in London and I go to Marrakesh. So I need to, like, do something else. Because I think Travis and I, we went right to Anchorage on our second playthrough. We went from London, then we went to, I think, Stockholm. And then we went up to Anchorage. Then we went to Havana, I think. And then we went to Buenos Aires, and then we came up here, I think, and we went like that. I don't know, it's so tough. It's so tough. Because I don't want to waste time. Maybe we go to, like, Constantinople first, do Dealings in the Dark, then, like, hop down to Alexandria, and then maybe I have to, like, come over here and just waste some time in this. I don't know how to unlock it. I have no idea. And we're going to also close out... I think we're going to close out the video talking about what the potential longevity is for Scarlet Keys, so we're going to get there. Okay, Dogs of War. So this was the one I was most hyped about, mostly because I love... Look at that, 3 different setups. Holy hell. So this was the one we played first. And he's on your side, and this guy is just... Take him out. Just evade him. I think that this mechanic this scenario, I've only played this one where you have to, like, protect the locusts and Doom subtracts. I think... Oh, this actually has... So, okay. We could talk a lot about this one. I think that this one suffers from the Echoes of the Past problem, where it's kind of just boring. It doesn't really have anything too memorable about it for me, apart from just kicking this guy down the stairs over and over and over again. But I like Innsmouth. I'm hotter on Innsmouth than I was in the past, but this scenario has what we like to call the Innsmouth problem. Does anyone know what that is? Here, let me help you. It's the Innsmouth problem. And that's that there's only one. Let's see if that changes for these other ones. Yeah. So, one act and agendas means that it's never gonna evolve. Right? It's the same thing the whole time. And this one does look different. The text on this one is actually completely different than the other ones, which is kind of neat. So it makes me curious to see how this one changes during other versions of it. But, how's this? So this one, he's the enemy. The Beast of the Crimson Cowl ain't even here. Interesting. I like how it shifts. But it's going to be very static because there's only one act and agenda, which is how the game evolves and throws plot twists for you. Like looking back at Midnight Masks. Everyone's going to remember the agenda flip into the Masked Hunter, right? And how much of that game changer it was. And like think that like single act and agenda scenarios aren't great for that kind of stuff. So I don't have much to say about Dogs of War because I've only played it once. But I do think that it would improve more if it was a little bit less stagnant. And then we got Shades of Suffering. This is the one that a lot of people hate. This is the one that I know Travis despises. And I know that there's people who do like it. Ah! As I said earlier on, this one, it has the mechanic I don't like, which is like get the thing to the right thing, and like it's an enemy that you need to move around. It's the Wages of Sin problem, which I don't really enjoy. It also has another thing I don't like. Where is it? It's on this, right? Which is the mid-scenario interlude. I don't like this. I don't really enjoy having to... I also don't like it in Dream Eaters. I don't like having to read and do a new setup in the middle of a scenario that much. It's not exactly what, like, I personally want from more. I can see people who like it. I do like how it's like if you have a Sorcerer or Clairvoyance, you get a little bit more flavor. But I think it is still just like a tiny bit too much text as well for the middle, you know? But I like the scenario, but the fact that the first act is best ignored is really bad design. It's the, what is it? The Devourer Below issue. Because Devourer Below is the same thing. You just like basically just ignore the game until Udmurdoth shows up. I will say I like the maps for the campaign. That might sound like me just trying to find nice things to say, but there's still a lot of like nice design in Scarlet Keys, but I feel like a lot of design went into this, and what would generally be the fine-tuning on scenarios had to sacrifice for all this other stuff. Alright, I've not played Without a Trace, so we're not talking about it. Final one we got here is the Congress of the Keys, which I don't like. Also, apparently, we've been playing wrong since the first time. Travis, I remember it too. I remember because we we did this setup. So how we played it wrong is that we dealt every angry coterie member to us as opposed to just dealing one per player and shuffling the rest into the deck. And I remember when we did it, I was like, the first time I was like, this is wrong. This seems wrong. But then it was like, no, the driver was like, no, that's what it is. And I've just done it like that the other times we've played it because we've only had the version 1, or the same version for this. And it's... we've been playing just on hard mode. And it's doable. That's what we learned. It's very doable. But I am excited to one day play it without that because I think it'll give me a better idea of the start. However, with all that said, my big problem with this scenario is that I feel like later campaigns start, for instance, I think they started to do more gamey symmetrical grids maps than thematically shaped maps like the architecture on Island and Black Star's Rise. I think that's generally probably true. I'm just thinking. Edge of the Earth. I mean, no, I think this one has more. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there's times when that does happen, but I think it's still pretty close. Because, like, this one has a thematic map, this one has a thematic map, this one has a gamey map because the scenario is gamey, this one's pretty thematic, this one's thematic, this one's thematic, this one's thematic. Don't know about Shades of Suffering, but I think it's thematic. It is thematic. And then this one, its second half is the grid. I think Edge of the Earth, can be pretty true for. I think Edge of the Earth kind of feels like that, but I don't think it's true for Scarlet Keys. Anyways, my big issue with Congress of Keys is that should be 2 scenarios. It just should be 2 scenarios. The scenario flip to the second half where you go into static land. Here, let's get some stuff out here. Where you go into static land is kind of just not great. And I think that this scenario would have been a lot better if it was split into the first half where you're in the coterie. I mean, it even has 2 fucking encounter decks, right? It even has 2 encounter decks. It's like second encounter deck. If this was just 2 scenarios, where in the first one you actually get to interact with the coteries like headquarters and you get to explore it. It's like you need like the finale for the coterie members and then you need the finale for the outsider and the hollow mechanic. I think that would make this so much nicer. Just if there was a bit more to it, right? Because I feel like what ends up happening is the coterie part doesn't really feel like... It doesn't really feel like it gets fully resolved, you know, gameplay-wise. And I think it would have been cooler if that would be a thing. Exactly what we did for one of my groups. We stopped out of the first part for the night. Yeah. It makes it a very mentally taxing final scenario, too. Because the second part in Static Island is not particularly enjoyable to play. And I think that, to me, is my big problem with this final scenario. Apart from the fact that I still actually don't know if I'm playing it correctly. But just that I feel like there's no resolution to either half of the story because I feel like neither is given enough room to breathe in the scenario itself. Like, if I compare all the other finales, I feel like I'm actually impacting it more, you know? Like, even Into the Maelstrom, which has a very similar 2 setup. It has, like, the thing, and then you go into, like, it has like the going through the tunnels, and then you get one big showing in Yanath Lay, right? And this one, it just doesn't, like, it doesn't feel the same. You have to go read the setup, read the instruction from Without a Trace during setup. Yeah, Travis did not like that. I remember that for sure. Hey, there's Without a Trace. Huh. Man. There's so much to discover in this. So I think that this is a good time for us to come to our closing discussion here for the Scarlet Keys. And it's the thing that I always see people bring up in the discussions. And I'm curious to see what myself, because I haven't thought about it that much, and also what you, the viewers at home, think. On this, it's no surprise, because it was actually pretty common. I mean, it might be a surprise to new players. But on our channel and in the community as a whole, the Forgotten Age was not a well-liked campaign when it first came out. Travis was notorious. Travis hated a good chunk of that campaign. And while I still think he doesn't like it, I think now that he sees, like, the positives outweigh the negatives for a lot of the jungle scenarios for him. But as before, like, he did not like playing the Forgotten Age. And I'm not saying that Travis is going to love the Scarlet Keys. This is just like putting like perspective into it in comparison to how things change, right? People say that Scarlet Keys, they predict, is going to have a similar sort of run for the community opinion on it. So what do you think? If you don't like Scarlet Keys now, do you think that this thing might be a grower as opposed to a shower? Because I've never really thought about it. Because, like, while I don't... Like, as I was going through, I think the scenarios as a whole, like, these ones, I enjoy playing all of them. Some I like more than others, right? Like, Dead Heat, I like. Dealing in the Dark is cool. Dancing Mad, I dig. And I've enjoyed On Thin Ice. And I'm kind of like, yeah, positive plus on... Or, like, mid plus on Sanguine Shadows. Dogs of War, I'm learning I need to try different ways because my experience is not really applicable with 3 different setups. My prediction. All right, here we go. The first, Stu Dunsparce just said A, which I think is fair. I think that Scarlet Keys is probably going to stay pretty polarizing, and I think that's because it was such a mechanical leap to go for this. And I kind of agree with what Astute Dunsparce just followed up. I do think that the scenarios themselves are kind of just good but not great, so it's not going to really scale. Like, there's no depths of Yoth here, right? But here's Holy Helicopter prediction. It will grow, but that effect will be to a lesser extent than what happened with Forgotten Age. I could see that as well. First time we had 3 red for an hour before we got to the next scenario, so I think the more I play it and have a plan of what to do, I will enjoy it more. Now, I think fundamentally this was a failure of how to structure a campaign. I'd be very surprised if they were doing an open world concept like this again. Yeah, I think that's also fair. Like, I'm really curious, and I'm a little bit hesitant. I'm like a little bit feeling a little bit like concerned about Hemlock Vale, because they talked about how you can visit different locations at different times of the day. And I hope instead... So what I hope is that it's one of those things where you get a map, and, like, it's one of 2 things I'm hoping. Like, I'm hoping... So, like, here, let's just draw a pretty picture. Here is Hemlock Vale. Here is different locations that you can go to, right? It's not a cookie, chat. Don't think I'm drawing a cookie, okay? So, like, I'm hoping it's one of 2 things. So, like, it's scenario 1 and, like, scenario 8 always happen the same, right? It's cheese? Okay, yeah, that's cheese. Those always happen the same. So I'm hoping one of 2 things happen. The one that I'm going to be okay with, but I don't really want, is that you have day, night, day, night, day, night, right? So it's day, night, day, night. It's so hard to draw with a mouse. Day, night, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scenarios in between, right? So what I think is that maybe like day, you get to do a scenario, and like say you did this one, that one's now done for the rest of the campaign. So you actually get like limited number of orders in which you can take it. That would be fine, but it's not what I like want. You know? What I actually would love, I'm not going to be upset if this doesn't happen, but like for this one, you get to choose one to do, and then you do the other for the night. With this one, you go like this, and then this one, it's like this. And like different for depending on how it goes. Like maybe this one has these ones. This one actually had these. My suspect is that it's going to be the first one. But I'm hoping to kind of like open world light is exactly a good way for it. I wish it was a little bit more limited than like full open world. And this is actually like perfect what Dice Gods is asking. Do you feel the same about dark matter? Some of the scenarios in the same orders, but others they are different based on the order you do them in. And that's exactly actually what I'm suggesting that I would like to see for Hemlock Vale, which is batch ordering, right? It's also kind of like the same with the first two scenarios of Dunwich, right? So instead of like having day-night, having all of these scenarios open, day-night 1 is just these 3. And you choose one to do during the day, one to do at night. The second one is these 2. The third one is like these ones. This would be my perfect Hemlock Vale structure. I think the alternative of just like you get to do each one once and it crosses them off when you do them, right? I think is also like, I think it's less daunting than this because it's not like full open world. But in my perfect Hemlock Vale experience, I hope it's batches. Just because I think batches is better for... if you go with your drawing without batching, it would be the same as the Scarlet Keys, but even more because of the day-night, right? Yeah, I mean, in a way, yes. But there's less forward thinking you need to do in a way, right? Because, oh my god. Like, if you do it just like in the first one where you just choose, the choice then is just like, it's like London with 6 different ways to go, right? But you never have to worry about where you go after London in the same extent of like, you don't have to think like 3 moves ahead on a map. It's very similar. But if each one it doesn't... Okay, I guess what also would change that as well, Holy Helicopter, because is if it doesn't matter on which day or night you do it, but if it's just day or night. Because if each scenario only has a day or a night, then it becomes a little bit less on time. It's just like, if each scenario is binary... Yeah, like that's, yeah, I think that would also, I think, really tune in like the open world of it, is if it was just, as Lucas GBO was saying, if it's just binary. If each scenario it's better if it's day or night. That would make it be less a scope. But as I said, I want batches. Give me this for day 1, this for day 2, this for day 3. I am very excited. Oh, what I mean is it has to be. There's no more. There's no way they do more variations in Scarlet Keys. No, I don't think there will be. Especially when they've said, as I said, Duke said earlier, that the campaign guide is going to be smaller. 2/3 the size of the Scarlet Key ones, they said. That's probably good. All right, I noticed D-Scarpack said something too earlier. I just wanted to comment on that before I close out the video. I'm interested to see how Scarlet Keys ages compares to Edge of the Earth, since the people are a bit meh on it as well. Yeah. I like Edge of the Earth. I like Edge of the Earth a lot, except for the final scenario. But I think Edge of the Earth is a really solid campaign. There's a lot of good scenarios in that one. And I do think that the reason why I'm so excited for Hemlock Vale is because we have a new design team. And I think that having to design all these scenarios, like, because MJ's been like designing for a long time in Arkham. Even when you get more help on that and like you get a bigger design team, the human mind can only work like as like the lead designer for so long. It's something that happens with Magic. The lead designers rotate from set to set, right? And I think that a new design team is going to be really good. I'm going to close out the video here, but I'll still talk. I'll answer your question, Lucas Gibio, but I don't want to get too deep into the Hemlock Vale madness, and I want to close out this Scarlet Keys thing. But those are my thoughts on the Scarlet Keys. If you did watch, I would love to know your opinion on the Scarlet Keys, and if you don't like it, feel free to tell me if you don't like it in the YouTube comments. This is the place to do it. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Have a good one, and as always, a GG's.